Facebook. Welcome, everybody. This is Reverend Sharon Elizabeth, also known as Baba Sharon, here at the Cosmic Center of Spiritual Light in Sarasota, Florida. So good to see everybody. I guess I'll be facing this way for the Facebook Live. We're still kind of experimenting with it. We have put it behind the computer before, and the sound didn't come up so well. So, we're tweaking along the way. But welcome, everybody. So, everybody's been talking about, there's a little bit of chaos and craziness in the world, and it's not new craziness in the world, the world in general. There's something going on somewhere that's not balanced or in harmony. We know that. But let's just say right here in the United States, but not in the United States, in Europe also, there's a lot of people that are frustrated, that are upset, and that are out there and protesting. Paris just had that last week, and here we are in Los Angeles, and there's a lot of other stuff that's going on. And so, what do we do? What do we do as light workers? And I guess the first thing I want to talk about, and let's just see how this segues into it, is there are energies out there, and a lot of these energies have to do with the astronomy and the planets and how they're aligned and different things like that. Now, I want to say something right from the beginning. In the keys of Enoch and in other places too, it does speak that at some point of awareness and consciousness, that there is a evolution or a transcendence above the influences of the stars and the planets. But at the moment, we're not there yet. So absolutely. Okay. I do see we have our beautiful May here, a great astrologer. We can get some guidance from that in terms of the frequency that we're in right now. And that's, as they say, forewarned is forearmed. If you can sense and know that it's going to be particularly a little chaotic, depends if it's Mars or Pluto or whatever that is, having that knowledge is very helpful for you. But what I want to say is that, in Ephesians 6, I want to mention an experience I had. This was some years back. It was with the Keys of Enoch and our dear Kim Converse, who was the teacher and worked with Dr. J.J. Hurtak for many, many years. We did actually in my home the Gospel of Mary, which is Mary Magdalene, the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. And that was one of the Gnostic Gospels. And as you may remember, it's not that long ago, it was only the 1940s that they found what they call the Hagamadi Gospels. And these are Gospels that were hidden by somebody, and which is very interesting. And then if you go into the history, you will see that just very similar to what's going on now, the narrative wasn't what they wanted. They would burn it, you can't read it. It was banned. Ladies and gentlemen, we're repeating the same thing over and over again. It's the SOS. I'm going to say same old stuff, but there's another word for that. And it makes you wonder and ponder. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is, in Ephesians 6, it was during this time we were reading the Gospel of Mary, and it was in the summertime, I remember, and I just really got this very powerful, energetic that said Ephesians 6. Now, I'm familiar with the Bible, but being brought up really Catholic, they were more like, we'll read it and tell you what it says, pretty much. So a little bit different than doing it directly yourself, although I have attempted to do that. But this was something that was really like, wow, what is this? So I did investigate into it. And of course, what it says is about that there's principalities, that you're not dealing with, regular humanity, that there's something else that's going on. And they called, in the Bible, at least that I read, Ephesians 6 was principalities, meaning non-human, I guess would be the way to say that. And so I'm like, okay, we know that there's way beyond where we are now. There's other things that are going on. But what it was at that time is that it was really telling me to really check out what this is, check out what you're dealing with. And that was way back when. And I was like, no, I'm good. I don't need to see it. I'm good. But for whatever reason, okay, the guidance was for me to delve deeply into what this was. And my experience was that, a time YouTube was coming, and I'm that this is maybe, I don't know, at least 10 years ago. All right. The YouTube was coming out. There was different synchronicity that came in, and it just got me. There was so much stuff I learned at that time. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is like really real. They didn't even know that they had practices, you hear about it, that are not the light. But that's a real thing. I'm like, oh my goodness, is that really real? And, I delved into it without going into a lot of details to see just how in depth and how that rabbit hole can go. So we can suffice to say that there are agendas, and I've spoken about this before, that is interested in keeping us limited, that is interested in causing chaos. They're the same forces that once war. There's that sort of thing. So the side of life that you look at and you say, well, oh my gosh, what's with all this suffering? And why repeating it over and over again? What's with that? I mean, doesn't anybody have said, oops, we've learned, from the past, and, we don't deal with that. Our history is going to repeat itself again. Well, oh my gosh. And then you see the rise and the fall of civilizations, rise and fall, right? So at some point in time, you become aware that there is really a very specific agenda, okay, by, I would say, certain groups, forces, whatever way you want to claim it, that would like to keep the world in chaos, that would like to keep us untethered to our higher self, that would want to keep us discombobulated and fall into fear and unworthiness and a whole list of other things. Okay. So knowing this, knowing this, okay, then you start to say, what is my plan of action? I need a plan of action. If there's a puppet master there pulling the strings like a marionette, and making me jump and, rattling my cage and, letting me fall into anger or despair or depression. And, oh, the list goes on and on and on. So, what is our plan of action? Well, according to Ephesians 6, it says, put on your armor of God. Okay, now what does that mean? That armor of God. Okay, that is nothing more than vibration. That's a nice, bright, high, shiny vibration. Okay, and it's real. It's 100% real. You get to a point where you have this, and you could walk into the world fearlessly, fearlessly, because the number one manipulative tool that's been used on humans is fear. It's fear. Nothing has changed. The Roman Empire, Babylon, on and on and on and on. Okay, that's the one thing that's doing it. And so one of the first steps, there's many steps to this, but one of the first steps is say, you know what? I'm going to really, shine my armor of God. How do we do this? How do we maneuver in a world, especially now, not the first time, but especially now, extremely chaotic? And we all sense it. Not everybody is to be a light worker. Everybody's sensing this. Like, we're at a new level of crazy, a new level of crazy. Okay, just in my lifetime. I was born in the 1950s, and where we are to now, I'm like, what happened? Okay, in this span of time. So, and I would say that there are those forces out there that's even now It used to hide. It's not even hiding anymore. It's in your face. How's that? Like, we don't care. We're in your face. So, what do we do? What do we do? Well, the first thing that we want to do is we know that we're not going to fall into the traps because there's a lot of traps out there. Okay. And so, one of the best way of not falling into the emotional body that's being manipulated is not falling to what are those traps? Okay. Okay. I tell you a real good trap. You're not good enough. You're not smart enough. Who loves you? Okay. And this little thing is going over there. Who do you think you are? Oh, you're not beautiful enough. You're not thin enough. Oh my gosh, it goes on and on and on. Okay. And then you feel like to fit in, you now have to uh, be competitive and keep up with the Joneses and this whole false narrative to be successful. You must have X amount of money, this level of education. You must have the car and the house and all of this stuff. Okay. So I just want to talk about like a little joke that I used to say regarding this. Here you have this guy who lives in a simple, simple home, like a little hut. It's on the beach. He comes in, he has lunch with his family, he has a siesta, they go back out, he does his job, and he's just living his life in paradise. In comes somebody else and says, wow, this place is gorgeous. And there's so much fish in the sea. We could make a real company out of this, right? And the guy goes ahead and says, I'll buy the property. And he builds this big company and a building on there is a processing plant, and they're doing the fish and he's expanding it. And he is working and working. And he says, wow, I need a vacation. Well, the guy that he bought the land on was on balance and on a vacation. And so this guy, the other guy that figures I have to make all this money and I have to, you know, be working this way is a narrative that was told that this is what success is for you. Now, you have to really, and this is where we come into, well, how do we shine our armor? How do we go into the world of maneuver? Well, it starts off, what about just being your authentic self? You can figure out what that is. That requires you to say, why am I doing what I'm doing? We're born into this system. And many of us just take it for granted. Well, that's just the way it is. But as we go into our spiritual journey and our spiritual growth, okay, what we got to do is go back to when we were little kids. That's what we got to do. Jesus Christ talks about be as little children. You know why? Because little kids are like, I don't understand this. Can you explain this? I know, like in Sunday school or wherever you went, and many light workers were the ones who were asking 100 questions. Well, I don't understand this. How did this happen? What do you mean? And they've got be as little children. When you came into the world and you were like, well, I can't figure this out. Why is this happening? Why are people starving? Why are there so many people that have all this money? Why are there these wars? Why is this competition? Why am I stressed? Why am I depressed? Why? And then at some point, you go to some authority, okay, and that authority may not know why either, but they have to put that that aura out that they do. And you say, excuse me, can you explain this to me? And maybe you go to 2 or 3 different people, and 2 or 3 different people may give you a different answer, but it's not really the answer, okay, that you're looking for to solve the issue and the question in your head. I know all of us as little kids, okay, at one point was asking a lot of questions because things weren't making sense. And that's what we need to get back to, because we've been sort of like indoctrinated. This is what you do. This is what happiness is, and so forth. And maybe to a degree, that's true. But if we're talking about the true internal happiness, no matter what, wherever you are, whatever your circumstances, that's another level. That's a joy level. And that joy level comes from a much higher frequency in the ascended realms of light. That joy is connected to love. Okay. And be as little children when you meet children, are they not, when they start out, just joyful? They're joyful and they're happy about things and they want to play. Yeah, they may have their temper tantrum here and there and learn how to regulate their emotions. But for the most part, little babies just smile and they make you smile because that's a real energy. So where we are now, okay, that we say, okay, things are looking like they're repeating again. That's not so good. The rise and the fall, the rise and the fall. And these wars just don't go away. And, there's so many people that are captured in suffering and fear. And, we look like what's going on. How do we maneuver that? Well, one, we don't fall into that trap. What we do, we're going to anchor the light. Okay. And we're going to do our best to practice to come as the neutral observer so that you are the watcher, but you're not involved in the drama because the drama is utilizing your emotional body and it's a real energetic. Okay. Have you ever had where you got so angry, upset, and it's like yourself, you leave yourself looking at yourself, going crazy because the adrenaline is pumping through your body? You have to come in a position of balance that you don't fall into that trap. You don't fall into the trap, okay, of low self-esteem. You don't fall into the trap that you have to be competitive and you have to have a certain amount of money. You don't fall into that trap. You have to be and say, hey, am I just happy with this and having family around? Is that makes me joy? I like playing cards on Saturday. Does that make me happy? Or I just want to save up and go on a vacation now, whatever that is that now we really have to be our authentic selves and start to question everything. Why am I thinking the way I'm thinking? And many, many times, and this is what the healing is all about, it is deprogramming a program that is not serving your best interest. Deprogram that. And sometimes you need to go to a healer or your own investigation, or, I remember, there are different healers and why there are different healers. And I saw like broken glass, like shards, and each one of us have shards that need to be put back in place. And you have a particular healer, for example, or teacher that has that particular shard for you. It's a personal journey. It's a personal journey. But you start to say, okay, how do I get my armor of God really shiny? Well, let's start off with trying to improve yourself, whatever that is. Gee, I don't have a lot of patience. Start working on patience. Gee, I get irritated so much. Well, start breathing so you don't get irritated. Okay, start doing little steps, okay, that it becomes part of who you are. And if you have that self-esteem issue, start going into, I am a divine. First of all, I am made from the divine. I hold a similitude in the image. What's wrong with me? Of course I'm worthy. Of course I'm worthy. Anybody who tells you different, they're wrong. You're absolutely worthy. We are all worthy because the biggest kept secret for humanity is they don't remember who they are and they have the divine spark that transcends everything down here. But we don't know it. We don't know it yet. But we will. There's many of us that are awakening and we're going to take back our power. So with this, I'm going to say namaste, family of light. We will see you next time.